Hmm. Morning, everybody. So, I see a lot of different trucking companies are having a freak out because freight is the great freight recession, right? Guys on the spot market aren't happy. These little small trucking companies are going out of business. And I'll say, this for Crete, just same as always. It doesn't affect big box carrier like Crete. Contract freight with Fortune 500 companies like Walmart and Kimberly Clark and Coors, Miller, water, bottled water companies, dog food companies, Kimberly Clark. This type of freight is as steady as it can get. And it doesn't matter if the economy is booming or if the economy is in recession or whether some trucking companies are going out of business and other companies are complaining about the lack of freight. Freight is consistent at Crete. It's a type of freight that is pretty much recession proof. You think about the staple products that people are going to buy no matter what. Daily household goods. People are going to buy paper towels whether the economy is good or bad. People are still going to buy dog food whether the market is strong or not. People are still going to buy bottled water. So this is the kind of freight that Crete hauls. Uh, I don't know what other companies are hauling. Where they have a lack of freight. Maybe the type of freight they're hauling is consumer discretionary, for example, where you know it's something where the consumer pulls back, then some of these trucking companies suffer. Or on the spot market where there's too much supply and not enough demand, where there's so many trucks per load that the rates aren't profitable as they should be. But at Crete, the freight is like smooth sailing. There are no stormy seasons of freight dropping or anything going crazy. It's always the same. Even during the pandemic, it was pretty much the same. I mean, there may have been more volume, but the freight itself was the same. So as a small business owner, this provides you certain advantages because there's a lot of predictability when you have steady freight. This is almost ideal, because you can bank on the idea that you're going to have a certain gross income per year, a net income per year, year over year. You know, I think one of the criticisms of even something like what Crete has with contract freight is that you could make more money on the spot market when the market goes up. That's fair. That's fair criticism. So when the spot market rates go to 250 a mile or more for a dry van, you're not going to make that at Crete. But that hasn't been the case for the last 3 years. The Great Freight Recession has really hit the spot market. So what what I needed and what I think a lot of owner operators need when they're first starting out is consistency. It's like I just need something I can count on. Something that's reliable. I'll figure out the rest once I got the freight to haul. If I can be guaranteed to get at least 2,500 to 3,000 miles per week, I'll figure the rest of it out. But you're not going to get rich overnight hauling freight at Crete. It's a long-term play. This is something where I think too many inexperienced drivers are out there chasing the dollar instead of looking at, you know, long term. Is there value in leasing your truck with Crete? They want to become like instant millionaires. They want to make $3 per mile and gross 300,000 or $400,000 for the year. And they take enormous risks to try to get that, and then when the rates fall, they complain, or they go bankrupt, or they leave the spot market and they go lease on with a carrier. Where if you just stayed with a big box carrier like Crete, and take what you can get, make the most of the opportunity, have that consistency year over year over year over year, save your money, invest your money, grow your money, and know that you have that steady freight you can plan your life around. I think when you're chasing higher freight, higher rate of freight on the spot market, your life is kind of chaotic. It's all based on opportunity and timing, and are you going to get lucky with a good load, and how long is that rate's going to last. The one thing about the spot market is that if the rates are good, it's like a gold rush, and a lot of trucking companies, a lot of owner operators rush in, and then the number of trucks goes up, and then as the number of trucks goes up, the rates come down. And it's like, well, that didn't last long. It may have lasted a few months, several months, may have lasted a year, but it didn't last more than 2 or 3 years at most. And then the rates come crashing back down. You can do that if you want to, and many guys do. There's nothing wrong with that if you can afford it. If you can ride out the highs and lows of the spot market, you you know if you have the financial strength to do that. Many guys do not have that financial strength. They might have scraped up enough money to buy their first truck, but they're not sitting on $100,000 or $200,000 where they can go afford to go play on the spot market. So I think this is where the advantages having steady contract freight with Crete really helps the small business owner first of all stay in business, be successful, and stick to it year over year over year. There's owner operators that have been with Crete for 20 years, and they've enjoyed that consistency all along. Do we worry about what happens on the spot market? Do the owner operators at Crete worry about the spot market? No, we don't. Do we worry about other companies going bankrupt and, suffering through a great freight recession? No, not really. I mean, we see it, but it doesn't affect us. It's like, wow, I can't believe these other drivers are struggling. Maybe they should lease their truck to Crete. But I don't know. It's like, if you're struggling that bad, why don't you join Crete? But Crete does have standards. You have to have a decent driving record. You can't have all these safety violations and stuff like that. A lot of drivers look at Crete and they poo-poo the whole business model, but Crete gives a lot of discounts, and they don't recognize Crete for doing that. Now the owner operators at Crete understand it. It's like, look, those discounts add up. Crete may offer so much discounts that it's worth an additional 25,000 or more per year. You're not going to see it reflected in your gross income or in your revenue per mile, but it's still there. But I think when guys come in from other companies or they come in from the spot market, all they focus on is, okay, how much revenue per mile, and if it's not like $2 per mile or more, they're not interested. Well, they never took into account the discounts that the big box carrier offers that they can pass on to their owner operators. So for the owner operators at Crete who enjoy steady contract freight, I mean, we don't have a lot of things to worry about. It's like, I don't worry about the spot market. I don't worry about other companies going out of business or the great freight recession or guys failing elsewhere. It's like, I wish you the best, but we have it pretty good here at Crete, and it's steady. It's steady. It's reliable. I can plan a life around it. I can make profit, and I enjoy a lot of benefits of 80% drop and hook, and I don't have to worry, is the company I'm leased on with going to go bankrupt? Everything at Crete is 100% paid for. All their equipment, all their terminals, all their trailers, they're not going to go bankrupt. They're family-owned private company. They're not on the stock market. They're not subject to uh, the whims of the Wall Street. You know, they don't take orders from Wall Street. Like some trucking companies, even Schneider, Warner, Swift, Landstar. Those companies are all listed on Wall Street. Crete is not. Crete is a privately owned company, and all their stuff is paid for. They're not going anywhere. In fact, they're growing. So as other companies go bankrupt, you know, uh, that provides opportunity for a company like Crete to gain more market share. As Crete grows larger and larger, then there's more loads for their owner operators to haul. You know, it's a win-win for Crete and for the owner operator. You know, uh, I see a lot of drama with guys at Landstar or other places, and it's like I don't have to deal with any of that. Not at Crete. It's pretty simple at Crete. You know, they make it pretty simple, and I can count on that freight being there as much as I can count on the sun rising the next day. You know, is it possible someday the sun won't be there? I suppose it's a remote possibility, but highly unlikely. So as a business owner, it's always good to have that revenue stream, a foundation of your business. You can't do anything if you can't count on that revenue stream. I mean, if you don't know if you got money coming in month over month, it's hard to plan as a business owner. I mean, how confident could you be at taking out a loan or purchasing equipment if you're not confident that your revenue stream isn't going to be there? Well, at Crete, it's steady contract freight. You know that freight's there. I've been an owner operator for several years, and the freight's always been there, even during the pandemic. I mean, the freight actually went up. So uh, it's nothing that I worry about. I don't worry about the freight. Now, some weeks I get more miles than other weeks, and it's like, oh yeah, I wish I had more miles this week, but it could be because of the part of the country I'm running in. It's not because Crete doesn't have freight. So I will wrap this up and say consistency over a long period of time is what many new owner operators need. You don't need $3 per mile to be profitable. What you need is consistent, steady freight. And that's what I get at Crete, and I don't worry about the great freight recession. All right, guys, that's all I got for you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the internet.